My brother said, "I can't heal if you're happy," so my parents banned me from gaming. Then I caught him taking cash from kids playing my PS5. My foster brother believed that I was humiliating him for his difficult background by playing video games, and our parents agreed. Travis spent the first 12 years of his life in one of the city's deadliest crack houses. Despite this, he said that it did not cause him any trauma or PTSD. He was proud of his ability to remain unaffected until one year, when he discovered that my Christmas present was worth $15 more than his own. Suddenly, he was a devastated victim suffering from profound PTSD. And witnessing younger children get good things triggered his buried memories. When my 9-year-old cousin received LED lights for her birthday, he destroyed the controller since he grew up without light. He also urged my aunt to cease buying Christmas presents for her children, and then insisted that our parents pay him with monthly surprise gifts. And when I bought a PS5 with my own money, he said it was emotional violence. I first informed him that he too could play. Even offered to purchase him a bespoke controller. But he declined. My parents only allowed me to play while he wasn't in the living room, per his request. I even tried headphones, but they weren't enough. Travis didn't feel secure strolling around the home while his suppressed trauma was pushed in his face. Within a week, I had relocated the PS5 to my bedroom, where the display was running at 25 frames per second. That pleased Travis for 3 days. I arrived home from school to find Mom clutching him on the bathroom floor. He was shivering, and tears streamed down his face. When he noticed me, he began to back away, like a mouse sighting a cat. After 15 minutes of sobbing, he told me how he saw the PS5 menu while strolling past my room. "All those other kids," he cried. "They had bedrooms and games. I had nothing." Mom chose a side. She stared at me as if I were the one who had reared him in the crack house. The new guidelines were implemented immediately. Travis retires to his room at 10 p.m., thus just 2 hours of PS5 are allowed after that time. Minimum TV brightness to prevent the light from shining through beneath the door for him to see. When I attempted to object, Dad answered, "He's never had what you have." Are games worth ruining his recovery? They made me feel like the evil guy. So for the following 3 weeks, I worked really hard. I obeyed all the rules and concentrated solely on having fun while playing. But then Travis began documenting my transgressions. He took photos of the light under my door, stating it provided him with glimpses of what he had missed, recordings of forceful clicking on my controller from the hallway. After enough of these transgressions, my parents gave me a choice. Give up the PlayStation 5 or relocate it to the basement. I selected the basement. There was no warmth, and spiders dropped from the ceiling onto my head. The old TV only had about 3 functional pixels, but I could turn up the volume and play for as long as I wanted. That was what they told Travis until he failed his midterm. He'd been skipping class to hang out with college students and use weed. However, failure was still my responsibility. He told our parents that he could hear the PS5 through the floor during his study sessions but chose not to say anything, so I got to experience what he never had. My folks viewed him as a martyr. The next day, they carried my PlayStation 5 into our garage, which had not been utilized in years. This way, Travis couldn't hear. The garage was packed with open paint cans from the 1980s, dead wasps, cockroaches, ants, and creatures that science had yet to find. That's where I spent my Saturdays, as gaming was once again prohibited on weekdays. It remained like way for 4 months. Nobody complained. But Travis needed something from the garage. When he walked in, he experienced full-body shakes. He slumped on the floor and required assistance. That's when my parents decided they were finished. The only viable option was to sell the PlayStation 5. "He can play mobile games," Travis said, still acting like Mother Teresa. "That's what poor children did. That is what I did." My parents nodded. Mom started browsing for used PlayStation 5s on eBay. That was when I snapped. "Shut up." The words erupted. I offered to share. "I did all you requested." Travis reprised his role as the victim. "I am sorry I was poor, okay? It is my fault that I am traumatized and that my parents have beaten me. I am such a failure." "It's okay, Travis," Mom said, hugging him. His expression turned to a grin. "He's going to sell that console, honey. Do not worry, I could not handle it anymore." "I'm done," I shouted. "Do you want to see what your precious traumatized sweetie actually does?" I took out my phone and linked it to the TV in the living room. I put up a camera after my controller went lost 4 weeks ago. Travis's face became white. He marched towards me, but his unexpected behavior drew my parents' attention. "What is going on, Travis?" Dad said. "Nothing. Every Sunday," I said. "When we're at church, Travis has been charging neighborhood kids $8 an hour to play my PS5. The footage began playing. Travis was collecting money from the two Miller brothers just across the corner. Mom's jaw dropped open. I'm not done. I scanned through Travis's text messages. Don't worry. My foster parents believe anything if I cry. Dad walked forward. Travis, isn't it such a coincidence, I interrupted, that the exact day these kids said they couldn't afford to pay him anymore, he demanded I sell the PlayStation 5 completely? The room became quiet. Travis was about to weep. This time there were real tears. My folks were staring. The hush lasted as long as if the entire world had been paused. Travis's face kept changing emotions, as if he were scrolling between filters, looking for the one that would save him. First came bewilderment, then hurt, and finally that injured puppy face that typically worked with Mom. The TV screen behind us still displayed his text messages, including the one about my foster parents believing anything if he wept. Mom's gaze shifted between the screen and Travis, her mouth still wide as if she was unable to grasp what she was witnessing. Dad stood there with his arms crossed, the vein in his forehead beginning to show, like it did when he was very angry. Finally, Dad cleared his throat and pointed to the TV. Travis, explain the money. His voice was soft yet strong, as if he was attempting to conceal something greater. Travis instantly stood up and put on a concerned expression. I was creating a safe space for those kids whose parents couldn't afford gaming systems, he explained, looking directly at Mom. You know how hard it is for poor families. Mom's shoulders sank slightly, and I could tell she was already buying it. So you were aiding them? She inquired, her voice gentle again. Travis nodded swiftly. They needed somewhere to play where they wouldn't feel judged. While they argued about Travis's alleged charitable activities, I stepped over to the TV stand and disconnected my PS5. The power cord sprang out with a nice snap. Travis's gaze followed my movement, but when he began to speak, Dad raised his hand. We need to pause everything and have a proper family discussion. I slipped the console under my arm and took out my phone, resetting all of my PlayStation passwords right in front of them. Travis made a step toward me, but Dad stopped him. Give him space, Travis. Mom stared at all of us and said in her teacher voice that no one would be playing games until we resolved this as a family. The injustice of it seared in my breast, but I knew protesting would only make matters worse. I nodded and went up the stairs with my PS5. This isn't over, Travis shouted after me. In my room, I quickly opened my laptop and began downloading everything. The video files were initially saved to Google Drive, then Dropbox, and finally OneDrive. My hands trembled slightly as I created folder after folder labeled with dates and descriptions. Travis's text screenshots now have their own folder. The footage of him collecting money received another. I even forwarded copies to Dad's email with the subject, Evidence, Do Not Delete. An hour later, Travis knocked on my door with the false soft knock he used while Mom was listening. Can we talk? He inquired through the door. I opened it but did not let him in. He was wearing his sorrowful expression again. I was actually monitoring those kids to make sure they played age-appropriate games. His voice sounded calm, as if he had practiced it. I was planning to tell Mom and Dad about the money and donate it all to charity for underprivileged youth. I just gazed at him, and he shuffled uneasily. You don't believe me, he stated. I continued gazing. Fine, be that way, he said before walking away. Later that evening, I overheard Dad on the phone in his office. He was phoning the parents of the two Miller brothers from our block and inquired about Travis's gaming activities. His speech was professional, but I could detect discomfort underlying. I sat at the top of the steps, listening but unable to understand the replies. No response came that night, which made my stomach churn. At supper, Mom made no mention of the money or the exploitation. Instead, she complained about how I had invaded Travis's privacy by installing a concealed camera. Privacy is sacred in this house, she explained, passing the mashed potatoes. We don't spy on family members. I wanted to inform her about Travis's images of light beneath my door and recordings of my controller clicking. But instead I pushed food around my plate. Travis sat there, appearing victimized, and sighing loudly. Dad remained silent, chopping his chicken into ever smaller pieces. You could have just talked to us, Mom said, instead of this ambush. The term ambush made my jaw clench, but I continued eating in quiet. After supper, I returned to my room and texted my school friend about what had transpired. I needed someone outside this place to reassure me that I wasn't insane. Their answer was quick, with a flurry of startled emoticons followed by actual words about how twisted up the scenario was. Travis is playing a very good game here, isn't he? Those cries over seeing all those other kids with bedrooms sound staged, especially when he's charging those same kids money to play the PS5, which he claims he can't stand to watch. They offered to let me stay at their apartment if things went worse. Just knowing I had somewhere to go made the walls feel less confining. The next morning, I awoke to my phone vibrating with alerts. Travis had commented on social media about being ambushed and deceived by family members who were supposed to assist one another during difficult times. The post has already received dozens of responses from students and members of Mom's Reading Club, all of whom offered their support and praised him for his strength. My stomach fell as I read through the answers, seeing him control the entire narrative before I could defend myself. I grabbed my backpack and proceeded to school, my stomach churning as I passed through the main door. Kids were already chatting and pointing, their gazes following me down the corridor. Someone had posted Travis's message in the group chat, so everyone knew something was going on at my place. I kept my head down and made it to first period, where my friend looked at me with pity and interest. The teacher began discussing the Revolutionary War, but I couldn't concentrate on anything but the buzzing phones around me. The second period had hardly begun when the office assistant knocked on the door and handed my instructor a pink slip with my name on it. The trek to the counselor's office seemed to take forever, with my sneakers squeaking on the glossy floor. Maya Collins was waiting for me with her door open, indicating toward the chair across from her desk. She closed the door and sat down, pushing a box of tissues toward me despite the fact that I was not sobbing. She claimed she heard there was something going on at home and wanted to check in. I began telling her everything, from the crack house narrative to the PS5 in the garage to the video I had shown my parents. She listened without interrupting, simply nodding and taking notes on her yellow notebook. When I was finished, she leaned back and assured me I had done nothing wrong by safeguarding my property and documenting the incident. She took out a folder and began laying up a plan for me to follow. Document everything, including dates and times. Set specific boundaries for what you will and will not discuss with Travis. Don't respond when he attempts to provoke you. Keep copies of everything in several locations, including the cloud drive she assisted me in setting up right there. For the first time in days, I felt in control of the situation. When I went home that evening, Dad was in my room, putting up the PlayStation 5 on my desk. He didn't say anything, save that it would be staying in my room from now on. There are no common areas at all. He plugged everything in, checked that everything was working, and then squeezed my shoulder before departing. It was hardly an apology, but the gesture was meaningful. I spent an hour sorting my games and configuring the system just how I wanted it. Travis arrived on my door at 8 o'clock that night, wearing a studied, sorrowful expression. He apologized for any misunderstanding and hoped we could share the game system like brothers should. I told him no thank you and began closing the door. He quickly raised his voice so that our parents could hear him say he attempted to make amends, but I refused to forgive him. Mom called to find out what was going on, and Travis said he had apologized. But I wouldn't take it. Travis gave me the quiet treatment for 3 days, which was really pleasant. Then, Saturday morning, someone knocked on our front door while I was having breakfast. Mom responded, and I heard Patricia Owen's voice inquiring about the money her boys had given Travis for 8 hours' work. Mom's face became absolutely white when she realized the neighbors were aware of the entire situation. Dad seemed glad to have someone else validate what I had been saying. Patricia was there with her arms crossed, stating her boys had paid a total of $60 and she wanted it back. I remained in the hallway, listening as Mom tried to explain. It was all a misunderstanding. Dad withdrew into his office and returned with his laptop, which displayed our home security system. He began reviewing the tape from all of the Sundays we'd attended to church, his expression becoming more serious with each video. There was obvious proof of children arriving and departing from our garage, with timestamps that matched exactly when we were at service. He turned the laptop toward Mom, showing her the kids who had entered our garage while we were gone. Mom kept looking for an answer, but she couldn't dispute with the video proof. That evening, we all gathered around the dining room table for a family meeting. Dad said Travis needed to repay the money, and we needed to set new limitations for the gaming system. Mom quickly shifted the conversation to whether I had violated Travis's privacy by filming him without permission. She went on to discuss the ethics of monitoring and how I had damaged the family's trust. I was too exhausted to protest anymore and simply sat there while she spoke. Travis sat there looking triumphant while Mom defended him. The next day, I went to the electronics store and purchased a tiny lockbox for my controllers and connections. I gave the combination to Dad but no one else, and I put it in my closet so I could lock everything away. Travis noticed me hauling it upstairs and labeled it hostile conduct. I merely shrugged and continued heading towards my room. That night, My phone vibrated with a lengthy text from Travis about how I was killing the family. He told me to erase all the recordings for everyone's sake and quit attempting to turn our parents against him. I did not answer, but I did take a screenshot of his message and saved it in my evidence folder, as Maya had instructed. When you examined it closely, the tampering was clear. Sandra Keller approached Mom as we were in the foyer after church service on Sunday. She inquired about all of the children she had observed entering and exiting our garage while walking her dog the previous week. Mom's cheeks flushed as she realized the entire church may know about this. I felt horrible watching her, ashamed, but also furious that public humiliation was more important to her than Travis's real actions. The next week, Elise Parker came up for Travis's routine social services check-in. She carried a big folder with Travis's name on it and a clipboard full of forms. Dad cleared his throat when she asked if there were any problems to address. He brought up the PS5 scenario, which made Travis' face become pale. I sat on the couch, watching Elise jot down everything Dad said regarding the garage rental plan and the money Travis had gathered from the neighborhood kids. Her pen ran quickly over the paper, and Travis kept attempting to interrupt, but she held out her hand to stop him. Mom sat there, uneasy, while Dad detailed how Travis had been manipulating the issue for months. Elise took out a separate paper and began drafting what she termed a behavioral contract. She outlined precise guidelines for respecting other people's property and not stealing money from youngsters. The bit about Travis needing to repay the $50 to each youngster was highlighted twice. Travis nodded while she was around, but I could see his jaw tightening. She made him sign the contract and handed copies to both of my parents. Mom hardly glanced at hers before folding it up. Travis began making excuses about not having any money as soon as Elise departed. Dad suggested he take a part-time work at the grocery shop, which was hiring. Travis placed his palm on his chest and stated that working would interfere with his trauma healing process. The excuses kept flowing, like a busted faucet that wouldn't stop leaking. Chloe texted me that afternoon, asking if I wanted to bring my PlayStation 5 to her place. Her parents had a beautiful basement with a big TV and invited me to come play whenever I wanted. It pained to have to remove my own belongings from my house, but the thought of not battling over it every day made the decision simpler. I put the system and all of the games into a duffel bag. Mrs. Reynolds lifted me up and helped me take everything inside. Their basement featured nice carpet and a sectional couch, which was far superior to our spider-infested garage. I linked everything up to their television, and Chloe's little brother was overjoyed to see me play. For the first time in months, I was able to enjoy gaming without fear of Travis's imminent tantrum. When I arrived home that evening, Travis was pacing the living room. He saw the PS5 was missing from my room and began ranting that I was concealing family property. He used the identical phrases, as if my gaming system belonged to everyone. He said I was denying him the opportunity to make atonement by sharing it with him. Mom questioned where it went, with a concerned expression on her face. When I informed them it was at a friend's house, Travis's face got scarlet. He accused me of hoarding resources and acting selfishly with things that should be shared. The next day, I returned home from school to discover my bedroom door open and my lockbox on my bed. Mom had gone through it while I was away, hunting for the PlayStation 5. She confronted me in the kitchen about lying and concealing information from the family. I took out my phone and showed her the text thread with Chloe from the day before, confirming that I had been open about relocating it. The fact that she searched through my private belongings without my permission did not appear to concern her at all. She just kept stressing that families shouldn't keep secrets from each other. Dad arrived home that night with his phone in hand, looking serious. The neighbor had eventually contacted him back, confirming that their children had given Travis $50 apiece over several weeks. When he showed Mom the text messages, she stopped talking for a moment. Travis instantly stated that the neighbors had exaggerated just once or twice. Dad opened his banking app and saw a deposit of $100 from 4 weeks ago that matched the timetable. Travis's tale continued shifting as Dad offered additional facts. Why did Travis believe that declaring it family property would work when everyone knew the PS5 belonged to his foster brother? The way he changes his tale every time fresh evidence appears makes me wonder how he recalls all of his numerous falsehoods. Mom said grown-ups would handle adult conversations and instructed me to go to my room. I sat at the top of the steps, listening to them speak in circles below. Travis constantly referring back to his trauma and how difficult his childhood was. Every time Dad sought to focus on the money, Mom softened and said, "Maybe we should focus on healing instead of punishment." Dad's voice sounded weary as he tried to redirect the subject back to the compensation Elise had requested. The meeting lasted almost an hour, and nothing was settled. The next day at school, I told Maya everything around lunchtime. She advised that I explore setting limits with Travis. We spent the remainder of lunch role-playing various situations in which Travis attempted to engage me with the PS5. She helped me practice reciting a short statement repeatedly. By the conclusion of lunch, I felt comfortable repeating my boundary declaration regardless of what Travis said. That evening, Travis began his lecture about forgiveness and moving on as a family. I looked him in the eye and calmly spoke my practice line about the console being at a friend's house and not discussing it further. He kept talking about mending and second chances, but I just repeated the statement once more. Then I rose up and left the room without looking back. Mom called after me for being nasty, but Dad thought I handled it nicely. 3 days had passed before I discovered my gaming headset was missing from my desk, where I usually kept it. I checked my entire room twice, below the bed and behind my dresser. When I confronted Travis about it over dinner, he simply shrugged and said, "Maybe I lost it somewhere." His voice had that faux innocent tone that made my stomach flip. Dad stared between us but said nothing. Mom switched the discussion to schoolwork. Without proof, all I could do was add the headset to my expanding list of lost items. The following morning, Dad had a family meeting in the kitchen before school. He took out a piece of paper with a timetable scribbled on it. The plan was straightforward. Travis and I would practically live like roommates who never interacted, with distinct mealtimes, TV schedules, and everything. Mom's face became tense as she read it. She kept screaming it would harm our fraternity, but Dad remained adamant. After a week of negotiating, she eventually consented. A magnet was used to attach the schedule to the fridge. 3 days later, Elise arrived for her follow-up appointment with a hefty folder of paperwork. She arranged them on the dining room table as if she were organizing a war. There were behavior records, boundary lists, and a payment schedule for Travis to repay his neighbors. Her voice became serious as she warned Mom that additional difficulties may entail Travis being relocated. Mom's hands shook as she signed the paperwork. That weekend I heard Travis stumble up the stairs at 2 a.m. His eyes were red and glassy as he walked by my door. The odor of marijuana followed him down the corridor. Dad wanted to drug test him straight away, but Mom started weeping because Travis was so stressed. She remarked that testing him would mean kicking him when he was down. I returned to my room and put in my earplugs. Dad's phone rang at supper on Monday afternoon, indicating a text message from Patricia. She stated that if she did not receive her money by Friday, she would take us to small claims court. Mom's fork dropped on her dish with a loud clatter. Her face became white as she asked what the neighbors would say. Travis went back into his victim mode, claiming that everyone was out to get him. His false tears streamed down his cheeks. Dad scratched his temples before standing up from the table. Thursday night, Dad drafted a check from our family funds to repay all of the neighbors Travis stole from, a total of $900, money that was intended to go toward our vacation. He promised Travis that he'd work it off with chores, but we all knew it wouldn't happen. The injustice made my chest feel crushed. I had to exit the room before saying anything I would regret. Travis phoned our aunt on Friday evening, when Mom was preparing dinner. I could hear him through the wall, wailing about how cruel everyone was to him. 15 minutes later, our aunt contacted Mom and screamed about causing harm to a foster child. Mom spent more than an hour attempting to explain and defend Travis. I heard her minimize everything, claiming it was all a mistake. She repeatedly apologized to our aunt for offending her. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Mom knocked on my door. She sat on my bed and asked if I could apologize to Travis for the camera situation. Her voice was quiet and exhausted. I told her I would not apologize for safeguarding my own belongings. She was disappointed but did not press it. Perhaps she was now realizing that forced apologies wouldn't solve the problem. The next day at school, Maya advised that I store my gaming supplies in a locker. I emphasized that a full console would not fit into those little metal cabinets. We sat in the cafe, contemplating alternative ways to keep my belongings secure. She claimed it was unfair that I had to hide my own stuff in my own home. We both decided that Chloe's house was still the best option for now. Her folks were cool with it. That afternoon I made the choice to keep the PlayStation 5 at Chloe's house permanently. I would only bring it home on exceptional occasions when Travis was away. Chloe's parents invited me to come over whenever I wanted to play. They even prepared a space in their basement just for my setup. It wasn't ideal, but at least I could play in peace. Chloe helped me put everything up, and we played for 3 hours straight. Her mother offered us refreshments and did not complain about the loudness once. Walking home that night I felt lighter knowing that my PlayStation 5 was secure. Travis couldn't take it, break it or deceive our parents anymore. The timetable Dad created was also effective. Travis and I seldom saw each other, save for passing in the corridor. He began spending more time in his room or hanging out with his questionable acquaintances. Mom still seemed sorry over our broken brotherhood, but she stopped attempting to force us together. Even Dad appeared more peaceful now that the regular conflicts had subsided. The home seemed different, quieter, yet less tense. A week passed by with this strange quiet, and I was actually beginning to relax until I walked down to the basement to get my old PS4 controller, which I had left on the shelf. The gadget had been shattered to bits on the concrete floor, with the plastic case ripped open and buttons thrown all around. Travis was upstairs watching TV when I carried up the pieces, and he hardly looked up to inform me he had trodden on it in the dark. His mouth twitched into a little grin, indicating he had done it on purpose. But I merely snapped images of the broken controller and returned to my room. Dad got home from work and noticed the images on my phone while I was showing him something else. And, for once, Dad was angry with Travis rather than me. He gave Travis two options: pay me $50 for a new controller or perform additional duties around the house for the next month to work it off. Travis spent the next hour arguing about how unjust this was, how accidents happen, and how I should not have put it in the basement in the first place. But Dad did not move. Mom stayed on the couch the entire time, saying nothing, which seemed like progress, even if she kept giving Travis those sorrowful looks. Travis eventually went off to his room, slamming the door so violently that a painting fell off the corridor wall. That night, at 11 p.m., I heard yelling below, followed by a loud smash that shook my entire apartment. I sneaked to the top of the stairs and noticed a fist-sized hole in the hallway wall, with drywall dust all over the floor. Travis was sitting on the ground, with Mom holding him and caressing his back while he pretended to cry about how no one understood him and how the tasks were triggering his trauma. Dad stood there looking forlorn, and I could see he had given up on getting Travis do anything. The next morning, Dad got up early to fill the hole with spackle, but Travis slept in until noon. I spent most of the day in my room, happy for the lock I'd put myself after Travis kept barging in without knocking. Elise arrived on Tuesday after Mom contacted her about the wall incident and had a lengthy conversation with my dad in the living room. While Travis sulked in the kitchen, she determined he required anger management sessions 3 times a week, beginning right away, and he threw another rage about how treatment was making him worse, not better. The first appointment was on Wednesday, and he came back telling everyone that the therapist was an idiot who didn't comprehend true trauma. By the second appointment on Friday, the therapist had phoned my parents, concerned about Travis's reluctance to therapy, but they agreed to keep trying. Sunday we went to church as usual, and Sandra approached Dad afterward to tell him she had seen Travis using pot outside the grocery store on Thursday afternoon with 3 high school guys who were known troublemakers. When she informed him, Dad's face went utterly motionless, and I could see him finally realizing the Travis problem was much more than simply the PS5 predicament. On the way home, no one spoke, and Travis continued asking what Sandra wanted, but Dad refused to say. My parents sat us both together on Monday morning to go over new home rules, but they only applied to Travis. No phones after 10 p.m., no going out without informing them where you were going, no inviting people over without permission, and Mom would search his room every day for contraband. Travis raged about prejudice and how they treated him like a criminal, but the restrictions remained. Mom began her regular room inspections the same day and kept discovering things like empty beer cans and cigarette packs, which she discarded without saying anything. Travis's claim that he walked on it in the dark, despite the fact that the controller was plainly crushed on purpose, tells me all I need to know about what transpired in that basement. Mrs. Reynolds phoned me on Tuesday afternoon, anxious about keeping my PS5 at their home for an extended period of time due to liability concerns. She gave me 2 weeks to find another answer, and the continual need to safeguard my own stuff was wearing me down. I spent hours investigating storage spaces and safe deposit boxes, but they all required money that I did not have. Wednesday night, I seriously considered selling the PS5 to end this drama once and for all. Part of me knew it would mean letting Travis win, but I was so tired of battling for something I had paid for myself. Dad discovered me looking at resale prices online and sat next to me without saying anything for long. Then he assured me he understood whatever decision I made, and that sometimes serenity was more important than being correct. Something about what he said inspired me to keep fighting for my property, since giving up seemed like betraying myself. Thursday passed without any serious events. However, on Friday afternoon, Dad instructed me not to play any games for the rest of the weekend in order to calm things down. I agreed, even though it wasn't fair, because I could tell he was attempting to handle an impossible situation, with Travis deteriorating by the day. Travis was listening from the doorway, and I noticed him smirking when Dad told me I couldn't game, as if he'd gained some kind of triumph. Saturday morning, I awoke to the sound of crashing coming from the garage and hurried outside to see Travis rummaging through boxes and old furniture in search of my PS5. He had convinced himself that I was concealing it there and was throwing things around, making a great mess. When he couldn't locate anything, he went directly to Elise, who was making a house inspection, and informed her I must have sold the PlayStation 5 and pocketed the entire profit for myself. She asked for proof of sale, or any evidence that I had sold it, but he obviously couldn't produce anything because that wasn't the case. That Sunday afternoon, Elise showed up unexpectedly for another house visit, and I felt this was my opportunity to straighten things up. I took out my phone and scrolled through all of my texts with Chloe, demonstrating how we'd planned for the PS5 to stay at her apartment temporarily. Then I showed her the images Chloe had provided me of the console safely stored in her room next to her desk. I opened my banking app and read through months of statements, which revealed no large deposits that would suggest I had sold anything. Elise made notes on her iPad while going over everything, and I saw her writing about a pattern of false allegations. Travis watched from the doorway, becoming increasingly enraged as everyone believed falsehoods about him, and went out to his room, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. Elise attempted to talk to him about the false claims, but the moment she knocked on his door, he began hyperventilating and gasping as if he couldn't breathe. Mom raced over to assist, but Elise simply remained there, making notes about his behavior into her iPad rather than reacting to his performance. She informed Mom professionally that she needed to establish boundaries throughout the exam, and Mom backed away, puzzled. I observed from the kitchen doorway, as someone finally refused to fall for his theatrical play, and it was like witnessing a magic trick get uncovered. The following week, Dad shocked everyone by organizing an intake appointment for family therapy, which Mom grudgingly consented to when he reminded her of Elise's warning. Travis pretended not to care when they informed him, but later, I noticed him hunkered over his phone, Google stuff like, how to manipulate therapists and what to say in family therapy to win. He left his phone unsecured on the counter while he went to the restroom, so I quickly snapped pictures of his search history before he returned. At our first therapy appointment, the therapist was an elderly man who didn't respond to Travis's bewildered demeanor when he gave homework, which included having separate rooms in the house and recording reparation progress. Travis kept questioning why all of this was required and pretending as if he didn't understand, but the therapist simply repeated the tasks without responding to his deflections. The new house rule they made was that my PS5 had to be kept off-site, and Travis couldn't contact any neighborhood kids under the age of 16, which wasn't ideal but was legally documented. Mom signed the agreement as if someone had died, but Travis made a huge show of signing with dramatic hesitation and deep sighs. Travis breached the restriction after 3 days by messaging the Miller brothers about hanging together, and Dad really followed through by confiscating his phone for 10 days. Mom protested, claiming it was too harsh, but Dad reminded her of Elise's warning that Travis would be relocated to a new placement if things didn't change. Travis became utterly silent and frigid after that, which was scarier than his typical theatrical performances because you had no idea what he was plotting. He used his laptop to vent on social media about his terrible home and how his foster family treated him like a prisoner. However, the comments section devolved into a scathing discussion. Kids at the school who knew the true situation began remarking on how he had been charging money for the PS5 and lying about everything. The public humiliation appeared to hurt him more than any other punishment we'd tried, as he removed the post within an hour, but screenshots were already being circulated in group conversations. Travis came into my room one evening while I was completing my schoolwork and made what appeared to be a sincere apology, claiming he was sorry for being tough. I thanked him but kept my distance and didn't say anything since I wasn't sure whether this was genuine or just another ruse to acquire something. He appeared wounded when I did not quickly forgive and trust him again. But after what had occurred, I couldn't afford to let my guard down. That weekend I packed up the PS5 and took it to Chloe's place for a gaming night with pals, and it felt great to play regularly without any fuss. We played for 3 hours straight without regard for loudness, time constraints, or someone having a tantrum over childhood trauma. I understood this could be the way things had to be going forward, and strangely, I was fine with keeping my gaming away from my house if it meant avoiding the regular battles. When Elise arrived for her monthly evaluation, she noticed that Travis was mostly complying with the new regulations but cautioned that any further concerns may result in his being sent to a different placement. Mom and Dad ultimately realized that this wasn't just about video games, but about Travis's whole habit of manipulating and lying to achieve what he wanted. Travis continued to play victim, but now more softly, as if he was testing boundaries to see what he could get away with before facing actual repercussions. The following 4 weeks passed slowly, with everyone treading carefully around one another. Travis had stopped doing large dramatic performances, but I'd find him eyeing me from doorways when he thought I wasn't looking. Mom and Dad kept the PS5 in Dad's office, so I could only play it on Saturday mornings before his weekend shift began. I'd get up at 6 a.m. and cycle 3 miles in the dark, simply to get 3 hours of gaming done before he wanted his desk back. Travis began spending more time in his room, but I could hear him on the phone late at night, discussing new prospects and better bargains. My parents appeared exhausted all the time now, as if they had aged 5 years in 1 month. Dad began securing his home office when he went for work, and Mom installed a padlock on the garage after Travis attempted to sell our old lawnmower to someone on Craigslist. I obtained a job bagging groceries at a grocery shop for 15 hours a week and began depositing every dollar into a savings account that my parents were unaware of. Since I was 16, the bank teller assisted me in setting it up without the necessity for a parent's signature. Every shift I worked, I estimated how many more bags of groceries I needed to cover the first month's rent and deposit for my own home. Travis attempted to follow me to work once, but my boss tossed him out for bothering customers about contributions for foster children. I concealed my work schedule and began taking alternate routes home, so he couldn't track my hours or calculate how much money I was earning. What an incredible ride. I'm intrigued what kinds of inquiries you'll end up asking on your own journeys. I cannot wait to do this again soon. Like the video, it is more helpful than you realize.